Don't go too far. Gotta focus. Thank you. Does this work? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm so nervous.
It's okay, we got you. Also, please click, and if you're feeling it, feel it. It's okay, don't be conservative around here, you know?
Yeah. So maybe clear from my accent, I grew up in the US. Originally from Italy though, so closer.
Whoop, whoop. No one here, it's lovely.
Now I'm out of breath from my dancing. Alright. It's fine. Get the Erica Badu. You're right, this is bright. Okay, so I do a lot of work around sexual violence and preventing sexual violence, doing healing work with survivors of sexual violence. We have... No, it's too real. It was before this too. I'm out of shape. But I do a lot of work also with trauma healing with survivors of sexual violence. So this piece is from my most recent book. Exciting. My first book as well, so my most recent book. But this is a monologue from within the book that's about consent. So just get into it. Consent is never and can never be carte blanche. Consent can be given under neither duress nor coercion. We all feel sick at the amount of coercion and duress that has been attached to sexual intimacy within our culture. These misinterpretations, shall we say, have reduced intimacy to a series of non-consensual sexual acts. We see today, finally, for the first time, for many of us, what a rape culture is and how it operates. A rape culture is a culture in which there is such an imbalance of power that it is possible for a privileged subset of the population to violate another subset with what appears to be legal and social impunity. We must accept that this is the society we currently live in. Indeed, we have heard and seen so much suffering that how can any of us deny it? We tell ourselves that this is wrong, that now we will be less apt to blame the victim, that we will recognize when this manifests in our own life, whether it be to a friend, a family member, or even ourselves. But we are each ourselves powerless to stop this epidemic, powerless to help any of the girls, the young women we see in the media, or the 1 in 6 boys who are a victim of sexual abuse, or the millions of people, young and old, trapped within abusive relationships, or the victims of ideologically motivated sexual violence. So, how can we practice sexual ethics in a society with an unethical distribution of power? It can never be ethical to use one's power to coerce another to agree to something they would otherwise have never consented to create a contract that does not take both parties' interests into account, which one party upholds at the other's expense, and which one party perceives as impossible or disadvantageous to opt out of or even to question. I didn't know if I could say no, is the line that reverberates in my head. This is consent in a rape culture. I didn't know if I could say no. This is the crux of the rape culture, that actors, adult agents, are engaging in sexual activity with such a fundamental misunderstanding of consent that often the partner who has less power, less agency, less sense of their own personal value has gotten such extreme and mixed messages from our society that they don't know if it is possible, advantageous, or dangerous to dissent. Consent and dissent, power and coercion. These are the ethical forces at play when we see value-neutral actors engaging in the sexual culture. Children watching porn, sexualizing the dynamics they see, learning how to treat a partner, producers and directors creating what the market wants, young people acting out these dynamics, whether on screen or in the privacy of their own home with sexual partners, without perceiving any alternative to this structure. The sex work industry, where those who have money exchange it with those who seek it to perform the same acts. And finally, the hunting ground that these dynamics have turned our colleges and universities into. Our schools, the places where young people are handed the tools of our society and asked to create their own, to see the reality that our young people exist within, are socialized within is an indictment of us all. An indictment of our sexual education system, of our own silences, and of the discomfort many of us share around the topic of sex, legacies of past generations of shame and sex negativity. But we must acknowledge it now. If we take nothing else from this, let us now acknowledge that we live in a society with long historical roots and an imbalance of power that has robbed not only women, but also people of color and sexual minorities of the ability to consent for millennia. A culture in which our sexual, emotional, and physical labor was taken non-consensually every day for hundreds and thousands of years. Although many of us are perhaps apprehending what this means and the trauma this violation imbues for the first time today, it is nothing new. If you find it morally, ethically abhorrent, I'm glad you're learning of it today. Because we need more people who are willing to make the ethical choice to step free of those dynamics, to choose that they no longer wish to benefit from them and to let them permeate unchecked. These are the same power imbalances, the same deals with the devil that lead undocumented immigrants and migrant workers to risk their lives and face almost certain assault to work here. The same patterns that have violated the treaties formed under duress and broken with impunity between our federal government and the indigenous sovereign nations of the land. The same patterns that have defined white personhood and liberty at the expense of the black and brown bodies non-consensually sacrificed, enslaved, raped, and imprisoned for its benefit to this day. The foreign policies that have allowed us to subvert the economic and cultural autonomy of sovereign nations abroad to serve our own. This is hegemony, the understanding that society is set up to benefit the few at the expense of the many, and that the perspectives of those not at the center are to be controlled and coerced into the technicality of consent, if only to take away our ability to dissent, to offer another narrative, to say, as so many brave young people are saying today, that what happened was not okay, that it was violent, that it was coercive, that it was rape. The only choice we can make as actors striving for ethicality in a rape culture is to each strive for consent every day, not merely to end rape, although this is a noble aim, since there will always be exploitation, and we do not wish to silence those who have experienced rape from coming forward and seeking the help and support they deserve, but to each practice consent a little more each day. Thank you.